Steve Callaghan set off on what he thought would be the journey of his life on January 29, 1982. He traveled from the USA to the Canary Islands and was on his way back across the Atlantic to the Caribbean, a journey of over 3,000 miles. Steve hoped to finish this month-long trip in just a few weeks, seeking not just adventure but also an escape from personal turmoil, including a failed marriage. Alone on his self-built boat, he found comfort in the sea's vastness. The first week sailing from the Canary Islands was blissful, with ideal conditions that let Steve fully indulge in his passion for the sea. He filled his days with music from the radio and kept up with his exercise routine, feeling entirely at peace on the water. However, 800 miles in, the weather worsened significantly. Despite the escalating waves and winds hitting 35 knots, Steve, seasoned by past storms, remained calm, expecting the storm to subside in a couple of days. He hunkered down for the night, letting the autopilot navigate the choppy waters. But that night, his world was shattered. A sudden, jarring impact against the boat was immediately followed by a rush of water. In moments, his boat was in ruins, and water engulfed him. In a frantic fight against time, Steve realized his boat was sinking fast, and he had seconds to get to the life raft. Pulling desperately at the release, he initially met resistance, but the raft finally deployed, and he made it to safety. Yet the relief was fleeting as he faced a dire choice. The raft's basic supplies wouldn't last, and everything he needed was sinking with his boat. Driven by desperation, Steve risked diving back into the dark, flooded cabin of his sinking boat, using touch alone to find his emergency kit. As he tried to leave, a wave slammed the hatch, trapping him inside. Facing near-certain death, he struggled to break free, and just as his lungs were about to give out, another wave miraculously opened the way, allowing him to surface with the vital supplies. Safe in the raft but drifting away from his shattered dream and the remains of his boat, Steve endured a night of intense cold, fear, and the threat of hypothermia. By morning, the full extent of his plight hit him. His boat was lost, and he was alone and invisible in the vast, merciless Atlantic. Stranded without a way to call for help, and knowing search efforts wouldn't start for weeks, Steve grappled with his extreme isolation. He figured he was 1,000 miles from the nearest shore, drifting into an empty stretch of the ocean with few ships passing by. His best chance was to reach the shipping routes 350 miles west, but even with good winds, that journey would take 2 weeks, while his water would only last for 8 days. Steve faced a cruel irony. Surrounded by an endless expanse of water he couldn't drink, under the relentless sun, with supplies running low, his survival seemed almost impossible. With just a harpoon and some other salvaged items, Steve found hope in 3 solar stills from his emergency kit, designed in World War II for stranded pilots. Unfamiliar with their use but desperate for water, these stills became his lifeline. Despite being 2 weeks from the shipping lanes and having only 8 pints of water, Steve's survival hinged on making these stills work. He tried using them with seawater, hoping the sun would evaporate the water and leave the salt. But despite many attempts, he couldn't produce fresh water, leaving him disheartened as he faced his first full night adrift. Feeling increasingly isolated and battling harsh conditions, Steve remembered that survivors often collected rainwater. He tried to use the raft's canopy for this, but the water was tainted with the canopy's orange dye, making it undrinkable. In a last-ditch effort to make the solar stills work, Steve dismantled one to understand it better. His determination paid off when he realized it needed proper inflation to function, and the joy of producing even a little fresh water gave him a sliver of hope. As his ordeal entered its 2nd week, hunger became a new challenge. With the vast ocean offering no help, the sight of fish near his raft sparked a bit of hope. Trying to catch fish was risky, especially with a spear in an inflatable raft. His attempts were in vain, and when his spear gun's firing mechanism broke, his hopes for food were crushed, deepening his crisis. With the range of his spear reduced to a mere 18 inches due to the broken spear gun, Steve's fight for survival became even tougher. Days of futile attempts to catch fish led to deep physical and emotional exhaustion, marking what felt like the lowest point of his life. He was forced to confront his life's decisions and accomplishments, all while battling the unyielding challenges of solitude at sea. Yet, Steve's determination remained unshaken. Recognizing the urgent need for food to fend off starvation, he persisted with fishing, aware that success depended on the fish being right under the spear. By the 14th day, his persistence paid off when he caught his first fish and managed to produce water with the solar stills. This success offered a ray of hope, suggesting that survival might be possible as long as he could keep the raft intact and his mind clear. But the sea wasn't done testing him. One night, a massive shark attacked his raft with such force that it lifted and shook it violently, instilling a paralyzing fear of being left defenseless in the water. Miraculously, after defending the raft with his spear, the shark left, leaving Steve shaken but unharmed. The sight of a ship on the horizon briefly rekindled Steve's hope for rescue. He readied his flares, only to be crushed with disappointment as the ship sailed past, unaware of his existence. Steve spent the following days looking for ships, each day starting with hope and ending in despair. Over 10 days, he saw only a few ships, none of which spotted him. After a month at sea, having passed unnoticed through the shipping lanes and with no one aware of his disappearance, the emotional burden became overwhelming. For the first time, Steve broke down, crushed by the immense loneliness that reflected his own feelings of isolation. Having drifted 700 miles, Steve faced the daunting realization that his next chance for rescue wouldn't come until he reached the Caribbean, another 1,000 miles away. Initially, the thought of reaching the shipping lanes, let alone the islands, seemed impossible. Yet, faced with this immense challenge, Steve found a deeper resilience within himself. He accepted the grim reality that rescue was up to him alone. His survival depended on his ability to navigate to the islands, maintaining both his raft and his resolve. As Steve pushed forward, managing to cover about 25 miles each day, he was faced with a crucial navigation issue. Drifting too far north could lead him to miss the Caribbean, potentially trapping him in the mid-Atlantic's expanse indefinitely, possibly for years. Life on the raft became increasingly grim. The cramped space prevented full stretching, causing constant cramps and disrupting his sleep. Saltwater sores, worsened by the salt-covered surroundings of the raft, tormented his body. Upon entering the tropical waters, the intense heat and an urgent need for more water than his 2 remaining solar stills could supply made dehydration a constant battle. Every drop of water was invaluable. Hunger was a constant companion, with his body breaking down its own muscle for energy, leaving him in perpetual desperation. The situation worsened dramatically when a Dorado he caught punctured the life raft, causing rapid deflation. This disaster not only threatened his immediate survival, but also drastically reduced his ability to fish or collect water. The raft became unstable, making movement like walking in rubber quicksand, and the reduced drift speed lessened his chances of reaching the Caribbean. In an urgent effort to save his only means of survival, Steve worked tirelessly to repair the raft. He tightly wrapped the damaged area and repeatedly inflated the tube, trying to slow the leak. Despite his efforts, the challenge seemed insurmountable, leading him into deep despair as he doubted his ability to repair the critical damage. With his raft severely compromised, Steve's situation grew increasingly dangerous. The deflated raft hindered his progress and drained his limited energy as he struggled to keep it afloat. This, combined with his inability to secure more food and water, brought him to the brink of despair, contemplating the likelihood of his own demise. For 10 excruciating days, Steve fought to keep the raft afloat, but his efforts seemed in vain. Overwhelmed by the mounting challenges and the ever-present threat of death, he reached a point of total defeat. In this moment of extreme vulnerability, Steve reflected on his life, viewing it as a string of failures, from personal relationships to his current fight for survival. Yet the looming specter of death reignited a desperate spark of determination within Steve. In a critical moment, he discovered a potential solution, a fork, which he hoped could help secure a patch to the raft. This small breakthrough provided a flicker of hope, though it was quickly overshadowed by the harsh reality of his dwindling supplies and failing health. Even with the raft repaired, Steve remained hundreds of miles from shore, his physical condition worsening by the day. Time became his greatest enemy, with each passing day reducing his chances of survival. By the 66th day of his ordeal, Steve faced yet another devastating setback. His solar stills, essential for fresh water, broke beyond repair. The loss of his primary means of hydration seemed to herald the end of his struggle to survive. With only 3 cans of emergency water left and his body ravaged by salt, Steve was pushed to the brink, both mentally and physically. Confronting extreme isolation and distress, Steve battled hallucinations and fought the dangerous temptation to drink seawater, well aware of its lethal consequences. As he surpassed 70 days adrift, Steve's fading hope clung to the possibility of sighting land, which he expected to see at any moment. Yet the dread of a navigational mistake haunted him. A miscalculation could mean being swept back into the endless expanse of the ocean, a mistake that could seal his doom. After enduring a nightmare of survival at sea, Steve faced the terrifying thought that he might have veered far north of his target, with England months away being the next possible landfall. The uncertainty of his location and the thought of an indefinite drift at sea brought him to a new depth of despair, leading him to question his very existence and contemplate the notion that he might already be dead, enduring a form of punishment for a life he saw as unworthy. In his deepest moments of despair, Steve felt a profound kinship with others who had vanished at sea, their outcomes forever a mystery. This feeling of utter hopelessness was magnified by a sense of belonging to a community of souls lost in the boundless sea. Yet, the sudden appearance of debris like crates, bottles, and plastic marked a shift in his environment, signaling the proximity of human presence and hinting at the nearing of civilization. The sight of an island at dawn, a mere 10 miles away, flooded Steve with relief and renewed hope. The lush greenery of the island stood as a vibrant symbol of life against the endless blue of the ocean. However, this glimmer of hope was quickly dimmed by the reality of the island's vertical cliffs and surrounding coral reefs, making any attempt to land futile. Confronted with this new obstacle, Steve felt the grasp on his long-sought salvation slipping away, despite having endured so much. Yet, just when surrender seemed inevitable, Steve's saga took a miraculous turn on the 76th day. He was discovered by local fishermen, their astonishment at finding him in such a desolate place reflecting Steve's own shock at being rescued. Steve's physical condition was critical. His leg muscles had wasted away, and his body weight had dropped to a mere 100 pounds. The path to recovery was long and difficult, yet after 6 weeks in a hospital, he experienced an emotional reunion with his parents, something he had hardly allowed himself to dream of. The island of his rescue, Marie Galante, was located just 60 miles south of Antigua, his intended destination. In reflecting on his journey, Steve perceived no grandeur in his survival. It was simply a necessity, propelled by unresolved matters and a relentless desire to continue living. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to check out the other great content on our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.